I'm Richard.
And I'm Gary, and these are our incredible stories. Hello to all of our listeners out there around the world. We're happy to have you back with us, and we do have a truly incredible story today. We're going to be talking about an individual who not only was a talented musician and had a kind heart and risked her life to save Jewish refugees during the war, during World War II, but also was an animal lover and is a good friend to one of our personal friends, Claire Soria, who we have here again with us today. Hello, Claire.
Hello, Gary. What a pleasure it is for me to be with you today.
We also have, our listeners have already heard Claire's story back in February. They listened to her incredible story back in February, and so Claire is no stranger to our podcast. This is her second appearance with us. So, Claire, we're going to start off with asking you, how did you first meet Berengere?
When we moved to Oakland, New Jersey around 1970, I was already giving piano lessons. However, I never really was trained to give piano lessons. I was trained to learn music, to learn the piano. And I happened to ask a couple of the members of the synagogue that I belonged to if they knew of any teacher in the area. And they gave me the name of Berengere Grant. At that moment, I decided to give her a call, never realizing the closeness that would develop between the two of us. She was the most amazing person that I had ever met. And through the years, I found out so many things about her, how she was a celebrity, how she came from nobility, and what a wonderful heart, as you said, that she had. So to my surprise, she decided later on in life to turn over the manuscript of her story to me. But it's taken me until this past year to find someone to help me put it together in a book form, and also people can log in and listen to her story online.
Oh, wow.
That is wonderful. And we've read your book, of course, her manuscript. And did I get it correct that she traced her lineage back to Richard the Lionhearted in 1191?
That's what she said. That's what she said in the book. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
And so she came from French nobility, and she's just an incredible person. By the time we finished talking about all of the facets of her life, truly incredible. But she came from French nobility, and she indicated that she spent some of her childhood summers at Versailles, of all places. And she said that her childhood, she lived in a make-believe world. Why do you think she would say that, Claire?
Well, because she lived in a chateau with her grandmama, and she spoke about her all the time in the beginning of the book, of the type of amazing life that she lived at the time. And she even mentioned the fact how her own grandmother during the hard time would give money to the poor, food to the poor. This was part of the life that she remembered in her early childhood. The fact that her grandmother was there for the needy, and also the animals and everything around her, how she always remembers that part, and being outdoors, loving her surroundings, and she described it so beautifully in her story. So that's why I feel that her stories worth talking about, due to the fact that even though she was born in nobility, she was born with that kind of life. Her life, she was not that easy. And because of the strong upbringing that she got from her grandmama, She was able to endure all the hardships that she had to deal with. And she did it the best she could. She lived in a time where a woman did not have the same freedom to do things as a man does. Even today, I don't think that a woman could, that it's as easy for a woman as it is for a man. But in those days, it was much, much harder. It didn't matter whether you came from France or if you lived in America. It was difficult.
Sure.
Now, she indicates that she was brought up Catholic, so her very first love of music happened to be the music of the Catholic Mass. The Catholic liturgy, that's the very first music, apparently, that she was exposed to at that early age. And you mentioned that she loved helping the poor, she loved the animals. She indicated that her favorite patron saint in the Catholic Church was Saint Francis of Assisi, who's the patron saint of the animals.
Absolutely.
Now, Claire, in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, she knew some people that stand out to this day. Apparently, she knew Gertrude Stein, Yehudi Menuhin. What was her life like in the Roaring Twenties?
I believe that she was still in France at the time, and she was a young woman, and her grandmother used to entertain a lot, and they lived in a chateau, and they also went to different areas, and the grandmother took Berengere with her. And so that's how she got to meet a lot of these people. Plus, one of her relatives is Vincent d'Indy, who in his own right is a celebrity. So she talks about him highly also. But she always admired people who were famous, or people who she likes to read about or meet. This was always something that I found interesting about Berengere.
Now, her first marriage there in the early 1920s didn't work out very well. She did have a daughter at that time in 1922, but the daughter died only 10 days after birth. And then shortly after that, she left for America. What was that phase of her life like?
Well, going back to the time that she was married before she came here, in those days it was a little different from what it is here. They had a lot of planned wedding. The family decided who she was going to marry. It was really not truly a marriage of choice on her part. So her marriage really didn't work out too well. And then losing not only a daughter, she also lost 2 sons.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, she did. And so that made her life. That was probably when she lost her sons. It was when she did return to France. She did return to France at one time. But coming to America, it was a lot of adjustment. And if memory serves me right, she became a nurse when she came to America. Her teaching of music did not start right at the beginning. That did not start until later. Plus, what she did mostly in Europe is to sing. She was an opera singer, and she sang all over the world. That was actually when she was young. And there are many pictures of her performing all over Europe in the book.
Yes, in fact, in Paris, she met the composer Franz Lahar in her memoir. She indicates that she met him, and she's one of the people that took the real Orient Express to Vienna and saw the actual real Blue Danube, of course, and she sang for Lahar. And she says it changed her life and her destiny.
That's right. That's right. So she was a quick learner. And when she had the opportunity to study under amazing people who took an interest in her, she was able to accomplish miracles, because not everybody can actually accomplish what Berengere accomplished, in my opinion. But in those days, it had nothing to do with the difficulty that she was having. She just had that gift to sing. And that's how she ended up singing in the opera.
Then around this time, we're looking, I think, at the part of her life in the 1930s. She learned to sing in German. This probably was the time when she was there in Austria, I would imagine. And then Hitler annexed Austria. What happens next? She
was still singing, and she knew what was going on during that time, and it upset her enormously, but she was there to perform and to the best she could. A couple of the people that worked for her happened to be Jewish, and she helped them get out of Austria because she knew the dangers that were there. So she told them just to pack their bag, and she would see to it that they would be safe by going with her. So yes, that was already in the 1930s. And the picture on the book was taken in 1935. So that was during that period when she was entertaining and singing. And it was not just Austria, it was all over. Wherever she was asked to perform, that's where she went.
So whether you save one life or thousands of lives during the Holocaust, you become a hero of that time if you do indeed save a life.
Absolutely.
So at this point in time, then, we can already say that Berengere was a hero of the Holocaust back in the 1930s. Now, her adult son, Robert, died about this time, and this is when she returned to the United States. And she knew Otto Preminger, the major motion picture producer in Hollywood.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, she told me her story on numerous occasions. There are things about her life that she did not go into detail. And when I actually helped write this book, it amazed me how many things she recalled during that period. She remembered so much. And for people who were closer to my age or who are closer to my age could actually live through that time, because she would talk about people on television, the people in the movies, people on the radio, and everyone that she talks about, she seems to really be knowledgeable. And she even has a lot of their pictures that I still have here that she wanted to make sure that she collected.
And then in August 1940, she walked down the aisle again and became Mrs. Vito Legatti.
This was when she came to America. There was a gentleman. I believe he was in the armed services at the time, and he took a liking to her, and he followed her. I had the opportunity, the privilege of knowing Mr. Liggotti, a very fine man, and he was there for her all the time. Every concert she appeared in, every place that she went, he always joined her. And he was a very, very fine man.
And during this time, at the age of 40, she gave birth to another son named George.
Exactly. And George turned out to be a very, very fine man. And he himself has children, married, and lived in the same town. So I got to know George. And I'm trying to remember the school that he went to, and she also taught there. Do you have the name of it right there?
In the mid-1950s, she was connected with the Columbus Boy Choir School.
Yes, absolutely. And it's through the fact that he went to school there that she used to go with him, and she was offered the position. So she taught there, and there's pictures in the book of her teaching there as well.
Now, this is also a time, though, where tragedy strikes and she loses her voice and moves from singing opera to playing the piano. Do you know the details of that?
This was also before I got to meet her. And she lost her voice. As far as she was concerned, now she's got to do something else. And she did have an amazing background in learning how to play the piano. So it was no problem for her to go from singing to teaching. And that's what she did. And that's when I met her, is when she was already teaching the piano.
One of the ways she mentions that she helped pay for George's education was to board dogs, and apparently she ended up boarding 71 of them in all.
How about that? I had a feeling that the two of you would appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
She was quite a dog lover.
So,
and yes, she not only dog, but she loved animals. She loved birds. She always talked about and also the beauty around her. She talked about her trees and everything that was part of our lives that we just take for granted. She didn't. I think she appreciated everything that life had to offer her.
She appreciated beauty on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the song of the birds, the sound of the piano, or her voice.
And also her students. She appreciated her students. She taught mostly classical music, and she gave recitals, and she also performed at Carnegie Hall, which I went to see her play. And of course, Gary Kirkpatrick, who plays beautifully. I believe that he still teaches at William Patterson. I'm not 100% sure, but he was a teacher there, but he performs all over the world as well. And his picture is in the book because he performed with her on 2 pianos, and they stayed very good friends over the years.
On page 98 and 99 of her manuscript, she describes one of her special students, and I'll give you the quotation there. She says, "This student was a charming lady with a sweet, pretty face, dark, curly hair, wonderful disposition, personality, and talent." And she felt she was an adopted mother to this student. Do you know who that student might have been that she was talking about?
I could say I have no idea who you're talking about, but I do. Yes. I believe she was talking about me. Yes.
Yes, she was. And so what a wonderful relationship that had developed by this time.
I had no idea that I was going to not only be in her book, but that she would actually say something about that. So when she put this book together, the manuscript, I don't really believe that she had intentions while she was doing it for me to have the manuscript. But yet I found so much that she wrote about, including me in it. It really surprised me, and I was touched. And I said to you at the very beginning, I admired this lady so much. And I really never thought that I'd have the opportunity to put this book together, and I could not be happier. This was one of the highlights during the COVID pandemic for me to actually have the opportunity to put this book together.
And we'll have her complete name, which is the name of the book, listed with this episode of our podcast.
Absolutely.
So our listeners can actually read it and follow up on that. She mentions, Claire, that piano teaching has changed over the years, and you have moved from a piano student of hers to a piano teacher yourself. Would you agree that piano teaching has changed over the years?
Absolutely. Classical music is not what it used to be. People like variety today. They like to go into popular music, jazz, and a lot of people even are interested in playing by rote. They're not even interested in learning music. And the beauty of the way that I learned to play the piano is that it coincided with the way she learned. So that's why we blend so well together. We were able to connect but her love was classical music, and she has quite a few students that really mastered the art of classical music. I know also for a fact that one of her students today teaches a Juilliard.
Really?
Oh, the premier
yes.
school.
That's
of music.
incredible.
Yeah. In New
Yes.
York City, premier school of music in New York City.
Absolutely.
Toward the end of her manuscript, Claire, she writes that things in life, some of the things in life you never forget, and she lists Carnegie Hall. How about you? Are there some things in your life that you would never forget?
If I say meeting you and Gary, would that be something that I can mention? Because I
Sure.
certainly feel that way. Meeting both of you was really and is something very special in my life.
Oh, and likewise, it's
Well,
been
yeah.
very special to us as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
And truly that love is appreciated and reciprocated from us. It brings me to one of my final questions because Berengere talks about opening our hearts and minds to others. And both she and you seem to be our prime example of someone who can open our hearts and minds to others.
That's exactly the way I feel. And we, especially in today's world, we must open our hearts and our minds to others. We have to also realize, and I'm not saying this in a way that I find is easy today, especially, but we have to learn to accept other people's views, opinions, and be able to talk about things without feeling that there's only one way, our way. We have to be willing to accept the fact that the world is not made so that we are all the same.
Right.
So unless we are able to discuss things with other people, how are we ever going to find the true answer to the way that the world should be?
Claire, I could not end a podcast talking with you without bringing up your childhood for a moment or two. And we're talking about musicians. We're talking about Berengere, world-class musician. We're talking about Claire, a world-class piano teacher. We're talking about an elderly couple of street musicians in Brussels, Belgium, that saved your life. Could we mention them by name so that they will never be forgotten also?
Thank you so much. The gentleman's name was Lambert Sabaux, S-A-B-A-U-X. Sabaux actually translated is wooden shoes. Did you know that?
No.
Sabaux.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say the name, and it's French, I lived in Belgium at the time, so did I. But Lambert Sabaux used to play the drums in the cafes in Brussels during World War II when I was in hiding with this amazing, amazing family. And his wife, her name was Leah, and of course, Sabaux. And she had been a concert pianist. So during the war, when it was forbidden to Jewish children to attend school, I had the opportunity to learn how to play the piano while I was in hiding, thanks to this amazing couple who risked their lives to save mine.
Isn't this...
So
Go ahead, Claire.
I owe my life to this couple.
Isn't this an incredible circle connected by musicians and music?
Absolutely. And I do feel that music is an international language. And if nothing else brings us together, I believe music does and will.
Absolutely.
Claire,
Absolutely.
we're going to give you an opportunity for final thoughts on our podcast tonight.
Well, my final thoughts are that as long as we have people like the two of you who bring amazing stories to the front for people to listen to. I'm getting a little tired of having negative stories on the air, negative things on the news. I think there is so much to be talked about and written about that has to do with people who are risking their lives even today to save the lives of others, who are doing things like you are doing to bring out the best there is in people. And I appreciate that so very much.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Gary?
Thank you.
Sometimes you're just speechless, but I agree with you 100%, Claire. I mean, the world could do with a little bit more positivity and a little bit more encouragement. And I think the wonderful thing is when we have wonderful guests like you who get to share stories and share and celebrate the people who are out there, or the people that have helped other people, who stand as a shining light as to what we should all do, and that's look out for each other, because in the end, we're all human beings and we all deserve the same kindness and love. No matter who we are or how we think or feel, we should always treat each other with kindness. And I'm so glad that we get to have you on our show and that you share in that same belief. So thank you, Claire.
Can I add something, please?
Absolutely.
All right. When people read Berengere's book, this is also what I'd like them to get out of her story. It's the positive way that she looked at life, and not necessarily the things that they may not approve of agree with, or whatever. No, she looked at life in a positive way, and she did the best she could during her lifetime. And I think that's all we can expect. And thank you so much for seeing that that's what I was trying to convey more than anything else. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. I just want to say thank you again to Claire. And it's that time.
I'm Richard.
And I'm Gary. And this really was an incredible story. Join us again next week